Zuwena was the kind of girl who walked softly and spoke gently, with a smile that made people feel at ease. She lived in Goma, a city full of chaos and charm, but her heart belonged to just one person, Bakari. To the outside world, Bakari was perfect. He was tall, handsome, smooth with his words, and always knew how to make people laugh. When they walked together, people would whisper how lucky Zuwena was, and she believed it too. But behind closed doors, the warmth in his voice turned cold. He started telling her how to dress, who to talk to, what dreams were silly. If she asked questions, he would glare. If she wanted to go out with friends, he'd say, "Why do you need anyone else? You have me." Her sister Safia saw the signs. Her friends tried to tell her, gently at first, then more urgently. "Zuwena, something's not right," they said. But Zuwena would shake her head, laugh a little, and say, "It's just stress. He'll change after we marry. He loves me." She truly believed love meant patience. She thought if she loved him enough, he'd become softer. She clung to the way he held her hand in public, the sweet texts he sometimes sent. She didn't want to see the truth. She was in love with the man he pretended to be. And so, Zuwena closed her ears to the warnings and opened her heart wider, blindly hoping that love would be enough to save her. At first, Zuwena didn't notice how slowly everything was changing. Bit by bit, Bakari pulled her away from the people she loved. He didn't scream or shout, not yet. He just made her feel guilty. "Your friends don't really care about you," he'd say. "They're jealous of what we have." When she wanted to visit her sister Safia, he'd sigh and say, "You spend more time with her than with me." So she stayed home more. She stopped replying to messages. Her world began to shrink until it was just him. Then came the words that stung more than silence. He mocked her cooking, saying it tasted like a child made it. When she wore something nice, hoping to impress him, he'd look her up and down and mutter, "That doesn't suit your body." The way he said it made her want to disappear. And when she spoke of her dream to open a small dress shop one day, he laughed in her face. "You? A businesswoman?" he scoffed. "Stick to what you're good at, whatever that is." She stopped dreaming out loud after that. One night, as she sat on the couch, smiling at a message from a childhood friend, just a girl from school, he grabbed her phone, his face twisted. "Who is this? Are you cheating on me?" Before she could explain, his hand flew across her face. The sound echoed. Her cheek burned. Her heart broke. She didn't cry in front of him. She didn't scream. She just stood there, frozen. Later, in the bathroom, she looked at herself in the mirror, red cheek, teary eyes, and whispered, "Maybe it's my fault. I should have told him about the message." She covered the bruise with makeup and a forced smile the next day. Nobody knew, not even Safia. When people asked if she was okay, she smiled and said she was just tired. But inside, something had cracked. She still loved him, or at least she told herself she did. She still hoped he'd change. But deep down, a small silent voice had begun to whisper the truth she didn't want to hear. Love shouldn't hurt like this. The changes came slowly, then all at once. Bakari started coming home late, midnight, sometimes even later. At first, he had excuses. Work ran late. My friend needed help, but Zuwena noticed things. The smell of cheap perfume clung to his clothes, lipstick stains on his collar. He started locking his phone. When she asked softly, "Is everything okay?" he'd roll his eyes and say, "You're imagining things." But the streets of Goma talk. Whispers turned to rumors, and the name Ayo kept coming up. Ayo, the girl who worked at Hotel Elombe. Ayo, the one with long legs and a loud laugh. People said Bakari was seen with her more than once, walking in together, leaving late. The stories reached Zuwena like cold water poured down her back. Her heart sank, but still she wanted to believe it wasn't true. One evening, as they sat in silence, she gathered her courage and asked gently, "Bakari, are you seeing someone else?" Her voice shook, but she tried to stay calm. "People are talking about a girl, Ayo, at the hotel." That's when he exploded. His face darkened. "You're accusing me now," he barked. "After everything I've done for you." He stood up, towering over her. "You're lucky I even come back home to you." Zuwena froze, her breath caught in her chest. She didn't yell back. She didn't cry. She just stood there, holding the silence like a shield. Her heart was breaking in slow motion. That night he slept on the bed like nothing happened. She lay beside him, wide awake, staring at the ceiling. Her eyes burned, but no tears came. Her mind was racing. but her body wouldn't move. She felt invisible, forgotten. Deep down, she knew something had changed. Maybe it had been changing for a long time. The man she once loved, the man who used to hold her close and whisper sweet things, was now someone who came home with another woman's scent and acted like she should be grateful he even showed up. Still, she stayed. Because sometimes, when a heart has been cracked so many times, it's hard to tell when it's completely broken. The rain was falling hard that night, loud against the roof, like it was trying to warn her. Zuwena was in the kitchen making tea to help her sleep. She had barely spoken to Bakari all day. The tension in the house was thick, but she kept hoping maybe the storm outside would wash away the one inside their home. Bakari was in the living room, scrolling through her phone. She had left it on the couch by mistake. He saw a message from her cousin, just a simple, "Hope you're okay, sis. Miss you." That was all it took. His voice roared through the house. "Who is this? Another man?" She rushed to explain. "No, it's my cousin. You've met him before." But he didn't want the truth. He wanted someone to punish. And then it happened. He grabbed her by the arm and threw her against the wall. She hit the floor hard. Her vision blurred. She tried to crawl away, but he kicked her. He shouted words she couldn't even understand. Then came the crack. Once, then again. Pain exploded through both her arms. She screamed, but the storm outside swallowed her cries. By the time it was over, she couldn't move her arms. She couldn't move at all. The next thing she remembered was waking up in a hospital bed, wrapped in white bandages. Both arms were fractured. Her face was bruised, but the real pain was inside. Her heart felt like it had been torn apart, piece by piece. Not just because of the beating, but because she had stayed, because she had hoped, because she had loved him. Doctors came and went. Nurses whispered in the hallway. Sophia was there, tears in her eyes, holding her hand gently. But Zuwena barely spoke. Her body was broken, and her spirit even more so. She stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering how love had turned into this. In that cold, silent hospital room, with the storm now far away, she realized something no one could deny anymore. This wasn't love. This was destruction. And she wasn't sure if she could ever find the strength to stand again. The hospital room was quiet, almost too quiet. Machines beeped softly. Rain tapped gently on the window now, not like the storm that had changed everything. Zuwena lay in bed, her arms wrapped in heavy white casts, her body aching with every breath. Days had passed since she was brought in, but Bakari never came. Not one call, not one message, nothing. She kept waiting, at first. She stared at the door, hoping it would open. Maybe he would come in, crying, saying sorry, saying he didn't mean it. But it stayed closed, and with every hour that passed, the silence spoke louder than any apology ever could. Only her sister, Sophia, was there. She sat beside her day and night, holding her hand, feeding her when she couldn't lift a spoon. Sometimes she cried when she thought Zuwena was asleep, but Zuwena wasn't sleeping much. Her body hurt, yes, but her heart, it felt like it had been ripped open and left bleeding. She could hear the nurses whispering when they thought she wasn't listening. Both arms broken, must have been a terrible fall, but their eyes told the truth. They knew it wasn't a fall. One nurse gently placed a hand on her shoulder once and said, "You're safe now." The hardest moment came when Sophia helped her to the bathroom. For the first time, Zuwena saw her reflection, her swollen cheek, the purple bruise beneath her eye, her arms in casts, helpless and hanging. She stared at herself for a long time, and then the tears came, silent at first, then shaking her whole body. She wasn't crying just because of the pain. She was crying because she finally saw the truth. The love she had fought so hard for now had broken her. The man she believed would change had nearly destroyed her. And for the first time, she didn't make excuses. She didn't blame herself. She saw herself not as weak, but as someone who had survived. As Sophia gently wiped her tears, Zuwena whispered, "I don't want to go back." That was the beginning. Not of healing, not yet, but of clarity. The moment her heart, though shattered, finally understood. Real love should never leave you in a hospital bed, broken and alone. After weeks in the hospital, Zuwena left Goma with Sophia by her side. They didn't go back home. There was no more home there. Instead, they travelled to Bunia, a quieter place where no one whispered her name in pity, where she could start again, slowly, gently. Sophia found them a small room to rent. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe. Zuwena still couldn't move her arms much, but Safia helped her with everything: bathing, dressing, even feeding her when the pain was too much. Every day, Safia reminded her, "You're not alone. We're going to rebuild, one day at a time." At first, Zuwena felt empty. She would sit for hours just staring out the window. The wounds on her body were healing, but inside she felt like a shell. So Safia took her to a local women's center, where survivors gathered for support, therapy, and training. That's where Zuwena met other women, strong women, who had stories like hers, women who had cried, broken, and risen again. Therapy wasn't easy. Talking about the pain brought it all back, but with every tear she let fall, a little piece of the weight lifted off her chest. For the first time, she wasn't pretending. She was facing the truth and letting it go. One afternoon, the center offered a sewing class. Zuwena had never stitched a thing in her life, but something about it called to her. Even with her healing hands, stiff and aching, she picked up the needle. It was hard at first. Every thread took effort. Every cut reminded her of her limits. But stitch by stitch, something began to change. She was no longer just sewing fabric. She was stitching herself back together. The hum of the machine, the feel of the cloth, the quiet focus. It gave her peace. It gave her purpose. Each dress she touched, each seam she stitched, carried pieces of her story: pain, survival, and strength. The other women began to notice. "You have a gift," one of them said. Zuwena smiled, a real smile this time, small but full of light. Her hands were still healing. Her heart was still fragile. But now, for the first time in a long while, she wasn't just surviving, she was rising. Zuwena never planned to become a designer. At first, sewing was just a way to keep her hands busy, to quiet the pain inside. But as the months passed, something beautiful began to grow from her brokenness. Her stitches got straighter, her hands got stronger, and her spirit, once shattered, began to shine through every piece of fabric she touched. She poured her story into the clothes. Each dress held a message. Each fold, each color, each cut told the truth she had once been too afraid to speak. When it came time to name her first collection, the words came easily: scars of silk. The dresses weren't just beautiful, they were bold, powerful. Some had visible seams like healed wounds. Others had words stitched into the hems: resilient, still here, unbreakable. Women from all over Bunia came to see them. Some cried when they tried one on. They saw themselves in the fabric. They felt heard, seen, strong. Word started to spread. A local journalist visited the women's center and saw the collection. She took photos, asked Zuwena questions, listened to her quiet but steady voice. Days later, a story appeared online with the headline, "From Broken Arms to Bold Art." The photos showed Zuwena in her studio, standing beside her dresses like a warrior beside her armor. The post went viral. People from all over Congo and beyond began sharing it. Women reached out, thanking her. Survivors said, "Your story is my story." Orders for dresses poured in. Local media showed up with cameras. For the first time, Zuwena didn't hide her face. She looked straight into the lens, not as a victim, but as a creator, a survivor, a voice. And standing in the middle of it all, holding a dress stitched with pain and power, Zuwena felt something she hadn't felt in a long, long time: pride. Her hands had once been broken. Now they created beauty. Her heart had once been silenced. Now it spoke through every thread. And the world was finally listening. Bakari thought he had it all: the charm, the looks, the control. After Zuwena, he ran around town with Ayo, flashing money and pride like he was untouchable. But pride always falls, and his came crashing down hard. Ayo, the same woman he left Zuwena for, disappeared one morning. She took his savings, his phone, even his shoes. Just like that, he was alone. No love, no loyalty, just an empty room and empty pockets. He tried to get work, but doors that once opened now stayed shut. People whispered behind his back. The same charm that once drew crowds now meant nothing. He was broke, jobless, and homeless, sleeping on a friend's couch, asking for meals, dodging shame in the streets of Goma. And then he saw it. Right in the heart of town, on a tall billboard above a busy road, there she was, Zuwena, glowing, strong, wearing one of her own designs, standing tall in a bright yellow dress that flowed like power itself. The smile on her face didn't just say success, it said freedom. Bakari's heart sank. He tried calling her. Once, twice, then 5 times. No answer. Finally, he sent her a message. Zuwena, please, can we talk? Minutes later, she replied with just one thing. A photo. It was the billboard. Her smile, full of peace. Her eyes, full of fire. At the bottom was her brand name, Zuwena, designed by survivors. Worn with pride. No words. No anger. Just truth. He stared at the photo for a long time. She hadn't blocked him. She hadn't cursed him. She simply reminded him she didn't need him. She had rebuilt everything he tried to break. Bakari sank onto the curb, phone in hand, world crumbling around him. He had lost more than a woman. He had lost the chance to be part of her story. And now, all he could do was watch from the sidelines, while she rose higher than he ever believed she could. She was never his victim. She was her own victory. Zuwena stood outside her new boutique, the glass windows shining in the morning sun. Above the door, in bold gold letters, it read, Zuwena. Inside, dresses swayed gently on racks like whispers of survival. Every piece told a story, her story, and the stories of so many others who had been hurt but never truly broken. The boutique wasn't just a place to sell clothes. It was a space for healing, for hope. She had turned her pain into purpose, and she wasn't keeping it to herself. Zuwena started offering free fashion and sewing classes to women who had been through abuse, just like she once had. Some came with bruises still fresh. Others came with hearts that hadn't smiled in years. Zuwena welcomed them with open arms. No judgment, no shame, just fabric, thread, and a second chance. She taught them how to stitch, how to design, how to believe in their hands again. But more than anything, she taught them how to believe in themselves. With each woman she trained, Zuwena saw a little of her old self, scared, silenced, but she also saw something new, rising courage. Word about her work spread beyond Bunia and Goma. She was invited to speak at a women's empowerment forum in Kigali. Standing on stage, wearing a flowing crimson dress of her own design, she took a deep breath, looked at the crowd of powerful women, and said with tears in her eyes, I stitched my story into strength. The room went silent, and then thunderous applause. Women stood. Some cried, others held hands. They saw more than a designer. They saw a warrior. After her speech, women lined up not just to thank her, but to tell her their stories, to ask how they could start again too. Zuwena listened, hugged them, and told them the same thing Safia once told her. You are not alone. Now when people say her name, they don't think of pain. They think of power. They think of resilience wrapped in silk and courage sewn into every seam. Zuwena didn't just escape the darkness. She became the light. The streets of Goma hadn't changed much, but Zuwena had. She walked through the same markets where she once bought food with fear in her heart, past the corners where she had waited for Bakari, hoping he would come home kind. But now she walked tall, head high, shoulders back, not just dressed in her own designs, but wrapped in her own strength. People stared, but not with pity. This time, with admiration. Some whispered her name like a story they'd heard. Others smiled and nodded in quiet respect. Zuwena smiled back, not the smile of someone trying to hide pain, but of someone who had survived it. Every step she took was a step away from the girl who once cried in silence, from the woman who once believed love meant suffering. From the days she blamed herself for someone else's violence, she now knew the truth. Real love lifts. It doesn't break. A group of young girls passed her, one pointing at her billboard in the distance. That's her, she whispered. Zuwena stopped and turned. She looked at them, then said gently, love should never hurt. As the camera pulled back, we saw a montage. Her sewing in her boutique, laughing with women she trained, hugging Safia, speaking to crowds, holding up a dress that once saved her life. And then, her voice, steady, strong, and full of quiet fire. He broke my arms, but I rebuilt myself with both hands. The screen faded to black, but her message stayed, a reminder to every woman watching. You can rise, you can heal, and you are never, ever alone.